right. Thanks for having me again. My name's Erasmo Alvarez. I got Tony Milian in the back. He's just answering some questions back there. We're from U18 Sports Medicine, which is part of Memorial Health Systems. We're part of the providers for many of you guys in the area for your kids. Today we're talking about primarily hydration and some dynamic warm-up stretches that Tony will go over with you in a moment. The handouts, some of them we just ran out. Those are available off of our website, u18sportsmedicine.com. You can print them right up. Everything's in there. The primary ones I want you to get off of there, I'll tell you right now. Tony, we just ran out of those, but I told you to go to the website. If you want also, you can give us your information. We can get you whatever you want to you guys afterwards. Now, let's go through some particulars. One of the ones that's in there and also in the website is a hydration sheet having to do with the urine cutter. Now, here's some interesting numbers. Weight loss. A very important thing you can do to help your kids out, and particularly educating the parents, is I'll use an easy example. Let's say the kid weighs 100 pounds. Weighing the kid before practice or before game, and then afterwards, if the kid loses 1 to 2 pounds, which is 1 or 2% of their body weight, that would affect their performance. So last I checked, most of us want the athletes to perform better. Easily convincing and educating the parents on the importance of making sure they keep the same proper weight all the time will dramatically affect their performance in a positive way. The opposite is not the case. If they lose 3%, let's say it's at a 100-pound kid and he loses 3 pounds, he's beginning to be at risk for heat illness issues. And that is obviously dangerous. We do not want that happening. In the back of that chart, or when you print it, you also have the 3 main types of heat injuries. You have heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Heat cramps are your first warning sign of something happening that is not good. Okay, and it's very important to make sure that that is addressed, because if it starts moving up into the other 2, which Tony will talk about in a moment, you're running the risk of getting closer to heat stroke. Heat stroke is preventable. It doesn't just happen like that. There are going to be signs before that should be addressed and not allow that to happen, because you're talking about a life or death situation. Okay? Now let me go over some of the more typical basic things that we can definitely address with our athletes. One I already spoke to you about, which is the weight loss, and doing that and encouraging the parents to do that, maybe the first, second week of putting pads on would be a good idea, because that way they can kind of get the feel for how they're drinking fluids. And if they're doing consistently well, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Then you can tell the parent to print this up and use the urine color. The darker the urine color is, the more likely they're going to be dehydrated or not as well hydrated. Now that's assuming they're not taking any new supplementation or any high protein stuff, because that can obviously, as you guys know from having done that ourselves, can affect the urine color. Okay? Now let's go through some basics. Some of the things I hear some coaches complain about is, the athlete's just not as good on the weekdays as they are on the weekends for games. Well, what tends to happen a lot of times from what I hear from the kids is they have their last meal before practice is at what time? And have it at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the daytime. Well, they don't eat anything until the evening or afternoon when they go to practice. Some of them don't even have lunch because they don't like lunch at school. You're not having an athlete with a good amount of blood sugar level at the time of practice than you could have if they would have eaten properly. So the recommendation is telling the parents, if possible, if there's going to be 2 or 3 hours before practice available, that they get something in the kit. Yogurt, smoothie, a meal, something that's balanced. That way it'll digest quickly enough before practice. And with that meal, to make sure they drink about 2 or 2.5 cups of water. Not a soft drink, but water. So that way they're definitely ready to go at practice time and you have a better athlete on your hands. Very, very important. The other one that you guys can control a little bit more is 10, 20 minutes before practice starts, making sure they drink about another cup of water in. Again, you're getting them ready for the practice activity. That's all in the handouts. When you print it up, or the ones that have it, you'll see it mentioned on there. Now, here's the big thing. During practice, the recommendation is every 10 to 20 minutes. I know 10 minutes is not realistic, but 20 minutes, they should get about half a cup to a cup of water in. Now, the longer you wait, the more they should get in. One recommendation I told some people is if you guys are in the process of getting new water bottles or trying to, for example, sponsor getting new water bottles, see if you can get them with lines on them that tell you how much fluid is in it. Because that way the athlete gets used to it. If I squish it 4 times, I'm probably getting half a cup versus not really knowing what half a cup is. Got it? Just a simple thing in the future. If you guys can take advantage of that, it would be great. Now, second thing, if the practice or the activity or the game is over an hour, water is not going to cut it. You need to get some sort of a sports drink in. So Powerade, Gatorade, not a energy drink, but the regular types of sports drinks. Because that way you replenish the electrolytes and you replenish also the sugar or the calories that are being expended. And you know down here they're sweating big time, especially when pads come on. So it's really, really important to do that. Next thing, halftime. I've had many people tell me, well, some parents bring fruits in for the halftime. Fruits are good, but the problem is it takes longer to digest because it has fiber. You don't want that in their system. They don't have enough time in halftime to digest by third quarter. So again, sports drinks should be your staple during halftime. It'll get in the system and out the system faster. And whether it's a sports drink or it's water, cooler is better. It gets through the system faster and it keeps the athlete also cooler, which is very, very important, okay? Now, last recommendation I can give you. After practice, educate the parents that they need to get something in the kids calorically, food-wise, within 2 hours. Because that window of opportunity is the best time to replenish their energy stores. So guess what? Next day you have a better athlete ready to go and do practice or game. If it's gonna be more than 2 hours before dinner gets given to the kids, make sure the parent stops somewhere and gets, again, either a Gatorade or a smoothie or a yogurt, something in their chocolate milk, whatever, something in their body so it gets in and out and gets them replenished, so then later on they're much more ready for the next day to do what they need to do for you guys, okay? As far as last few things I want to go over, clothing. Wicking is the way to go, obviously, so going with the light colored wicking clothing is very, very important. You don't have to go Nike anymore, you don't have to go Under Armour, you can go Walmart, Target, anywhere sells wicking clothes. Get them, and the lighter color is obviously better because you want to get the sweat off the body. The sweat off the body on a shirt is going to allow the air to evaporate it better versus on their body it takes longer and overheats them. And then last recommendation I can give you as a physical therapist. Conditioning is extremely important, but it should not, I know you guys have to end it at preseason. It has to be continued year-round with your athletes, because what happens is where we see the injuries coming up, they start happening mid-season to end of season, because what happens? By mid-season, end season, they're not doing any more resistance training, they're not doing major stretching stuff, they end up losing fitness, and then the injury rate increases. You want to educate the parents on the importance of doing a lower level conditioning program throughout the season, because it's going to end up doing two things: hopefully preventing injury, and number two, helping them with being at a higher level of performance. And regarding the fallacy, well, you can't strength train kids. No, you can do resistance training on kids. It's certain things you can't do at certain ages, but you can do stuff. There's TheraBands, there's ankle weights, there's body weight, there's tons of things you can do with them, and that'll prepare them when they get to high school that they don't get slammed in the gym room. You've already prepped them year-round doing lighter things and getting them ready for that. And all the exercises you and I do in the gym, they can do with TheraBands, with light dumbbells, with their body weight, easily at home or at the Y. So if you want any particulars on that, I'll be more than happy to answer some of that, okay? Now I'll let Tony go right into some of the dynamic stretching, and he also talked to you a little bit more about the hedonist issues that are very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, guys, can you guys hear me? Are you good? Guys, first of all, I apologize that for those of you who didn't get a package we ran out. I just had a good conversation with George. We're gonna put our information on the website, on the AYFL website. So if you didn't get it, it'll be on the website, on there. One of the sheets that's in that bag, it's a sheet that has information on the three most popular heat-related issues that you're probably gonna see on the field. Heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Hopefully you don't get to the last one. Hopefully you don't get to heat stroke, but they don't have to occur in that order, but typically you might see a kid who's starting to have cramps. Okay, that's the first sign that it's a kid that's likely to start to have some hydration type injuries. When you have that kid, you need to give him water. You need to give him a sports drink. And part of what we talked about is if you have a kid who's having cramps, one of the fastest ways to get them kind of hydrated or rehydrated is you can dilute the sports drink. You can do 50-50. 50% sports drink, 50% water. By diluting the sports drink, you're gonna decrease the sugar content and that kid's body is gonna be able to absorb it a lot quicker. Okay, so that's a little tip for you guys. So that's a heat cramp. Heat exhaustion, now you have a kid who's probably pale, sweating profusely, feeling lightheaded. That's a kid who's heading in the wrong direction. That's a kid who you now need to remove from the field, get him to an air-conditioned, shaded area, get them water, monitor that kid and make sure he doesn't lose consciousness, okay? Heat stroke is now a child who has lost their ability to sweat. They're probably red, they're no longer sweating, they're probably unconscious, and that's a medical emergency. If you get to somebody that's a heat stroke, that's the situation where you not only call 911, but you call, right? We call 911, but we also, in the meantime, we have to do extreme measures to cool that kid's body down. We have to take their clothes out, put ice on them, whatever you need to do to cool that body down. That kid is dying on you. When they're on heat stroke, they're dying, they're cooking. That's what they're doing, they're cooking. So it should not get to that point, guys. It really, the message that we want to get is that information we're giving you, we're sharing it with you, and we highly recommend that you share it with your parents. And then, in talking with George, we're gonna have that opportunity to share it with the parents as well. But it's a team effort. It's everybody on the sideline can monitor these kids, and it should not get to the heat stroke point. Okay, these guys should not have to be on the field. Okay. Dynamic versus static stretching. A static stretch is what we typically know as a stretch that you hold. So if I'm stretching my hamstrings, you lean forward, and I'm stretching my left hamstring here. That's a static stretch, okay? Those stretches, when done before activity, before a practice, before a game, they tend to relax the muscle, they tend to kind of cool down the muscle. They're doing everything opposite to what you're gonna ask that kid's body to do on the field, okay? So a lot of the studies and the recent studies are showing that you wanna do more dynamic type stretching, which introduce different planes of motion, introducing a lengthening and a shortening of the muscles, which is what the muscles are going to do when they're playing on the field. Does that make sense? I'm trying to give you guys a lot of information in a short period of time. Okay? A dynamic type stretching, and I gave you guys some pictures on the handout, and those of you who didn't get it, you'll see it on the website. But if you all stand on your right leg, let me just give you an example. Stand on your right leg, and with your left, all I want you to do is just reach forward and back, and do that like 5 or 6 reps. And what you're gonna feel is you're gonna feel bending the knee. There you go. So you're bending and forward, bending and forward, bending and forward. What you're doing is you're gonna feel burn on the leg that you're standing on. Okay? You're lengthening your Achilles, your calf. You're introducing balance to that exercise. Now you're stretching the muscle in a dynamic way. Okay? Most strains or sprains, okay, a strain is just a pull muscle. Okay? You hear, oh, I pull my hamstring. Muscles are like rubber bands. Okay, a pull just means that you went beyond the comfort level of that muscle and you tore some fibers. Okay, that's a pull muscle. By introducing dynamic stretching, what I just did with my calf, I'm doing this. I'm doing this to my calf and my Achilles. But you're doing it in a controlled environment, okay, where they're not gonna get hurt, but now you're introducing the mechanism of injury for that particular muscle. So you wanna mimic the way they're likely gonna get hurt on the field. And I cannot sit here and tell you you're never gonna have a kid that has a pull muscle. That's BS. It can happen, but you're gonna lessen the severity of that happening or the severity of the injury by doing that, okay? There's another exercise on there where I'm kind of standing and leaning forward. What I'm doing with that is as I reach forward, I'm stretching my hamstrings, I'm stretching my lower back, and I'm doing it in one plane. Then I do it on the side, and I get it on groin. Then I'm opening my hips, and I do it this way. So you're introducing different planes of motion, and you wanna do it, certain reps. So you go 1, then you go to here, 2, and then you open it up. So all you're doing is 2 to 3 reps, okay? You don't want to do 10, 15 reps because they're going to be sore, they're not going to perform. Okay, 2 to 3 reps is just a warm-up. Does that make sense so far? Okay, now after the game, after the practice is over, that's when you want to do the static stretching. Okay, so you still want to do it, but you want to do it after the fact. Okay, any questions? Did everybody get a lanyard? You didn't get one? All right, guys, you'll see our information on the website, and I'll put my information on there. If you have questions, feel free to email me. You're welcome.